Welcome to the Common Man's Nations channel. First thing is I want to thank the people that viewed my videos. I want to thank y'all very much. And today I'm making this video to explain the other videos I have out. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the disunion, that video. And I'm going to explain the reparation payments. I read a paper, and it was I guess an essay or some kind of paper written by an African American, and he was stating the fact that he thought every African American in America should receive $148,000. Now, when I thought of the disunion, I said, you know, the disunion is something people do when they don't get along, when they fight and argue all the time, and they just can't stand to see each other in stores and in coffee shops and in malls, and you know, we're getting violent towards each other. It's kind of like a marriage. When you get violent with each other, can't stand each other, you get a divorce. And so it all comes down to, in a divorce, what does each side get? So I figured it out. The best thing was to split the country straight in half under 100-degree longitude west for the enlightened side and 100-degree longitude east for the traditionalist side. And I figured out the reparation payments because you could take all the government-owned land, which will no longer belong to the United States government because it's been dissolved, and you take it and you divide it up amongst all the African Americans in the country now, and it comes out to about 8.22 acres each. And then you take the GDP for all the states from the 100-degree longitude west. You take the combined GDP for 5 years for each generation removed from slavery, and it comes out to about $1 million. So I figured $1 million and 8.22 acres of land was a good reparations payment. What I failed to explain was, maybe I did, was the fact those payments only happen if the disunion happens. It can't happen if we don't get split the country in half. It just doesn't happen. And if it does happen, it doesn't come from people's private land. But let's say you want to stay on the enlightened side, you can. But let's say I want to move to the traditionalist side. Well, you'll have a grace period where you can actually sell your property and then move over here. Keep in mind that people will have $1 million to buy your property or your land. So you'll be able to come back over to the traditionalist side with it, whatever you sell your property with for. So that was one thing I don't think I explained good enough. And the other thing was the traditionalist side, the Disunion 2 video. I didn't really go into depth on that one because I was going to do a separate paper, because I have actually written it's kind of a, I don't know if it's a manifesto, but it's kind of a way to set up that side of the country. And I know that the GDP, combined GDP, was much larger than the enlightened side, but it doesn't matter because both sides will actually form their own governments and be their own country, so that GDP will be dissolved. Now for the enlightened side, that GDP for 5 years will be dissolved after they divvy out the reparation payments. They actually will have enough money to do that. So, and each side will actually get gold. Each side will actually get half of the military equipment and surplus and stuff like that. So we wouldn't be starting from scratch. And that mainly, I did it that way to keep foreign powers from trying to invade either side. And that way we would still have standing armies. You know, you'll have generals, you'll have, you know, your ranks. Someone will just want to be on the enlightened side, and some will be on the traditionalist side. The only thing I didn't really explain again on that was the reparations, how that only happened if the country divided. And another thing was, it's going to be a big fight to stop the control from the political powers at hand, and you'll see that those people will actually try to join together, because they have huge backers, and this is their corporation. That's why you see the same people in power every 4 years, and some people have been in power 40 years. So, the next video I wanted to go more in detail about was the plutocratic Republic of America. And I know that sounds funny, but that's what I really shouldn't even call it that. I should have called it the plutocratic socialist America, because that's what we really are. And I say that because, one, the plutocrats, nothing but really wealthy people run this country, and corporations run this country. It's actually a company too. And keep in mind, they do not live by the same advice and the same rules they put on you. They get free health care, you do not. You have to pay for it, and if you don't pay for it, you get fined. They get free postal, you do not. They get free security, you do not. They get insider trading, you can't do that, you'll go to jail. In other words, they get to look into what companies may or may not make it, and then they have to say so whether they do or don't, and they become millionaires. They become generational wealthy, you become generational poor, because they keep raising your taxes. You pay taxes, they do not. Yeah, they show a tax return, but most of them start foundations or they hide their money offshore. So that's that. And that's what I mean by plutocrats. And I call it a socialist country, what I should have called the paper, but it's socialist because socialism tries to get rid of the middle class person, the landholder. And you think you own your house, and you may have your house paid off, and you might say, my house is paid off, they'll never get my house. Actually, they can. They own the right to repo your house if you don't pay your property tax. They can put it up on a tax lien and then auction it off. So now you don't even own your house. And if you don't pay for your driver's license or your registration, you can't drive your car on their roads. Not your roads, their roads. Even though your money built it, it's their roads. So there again, that's communism. And keep in mind, we're supposed to be a republic. A republic gives supreme power over the government to the common people. Do we have supreme power over the government? No, we do not. We have no power. And to further your loss of control over the government, they develop bureaucrats. Those lovely people you get to deal with that issue out their orders from up top so they don't ever have to see you in person. Until it's time to come beg for your votes. And that's when you get to see them. So the next one I want to talk about is I want to talk about my last paper I had of the Great Infiltrator. And I'm actually talking about straight up socialist and straight up hardcore communist. These people are violent people. These people cannot be trusted, and these people should not even be in power in our government. These people should be in jail, every last one of them. And all the people that are causing this socialist power to come in should be in jail. Really, it's treason. Treason requires death. So, that's how that rule is, but we have laws now that keep us from doing stuff like that. So they should be in jail, but it's never going to happen. And I say it's never going to happen because when a politician promises you that they're going to do something, they only do that to receive a vote. And then once they do it, nothing happens. I know y'all remember the saying, the chants, lock her up, lock her up. Well, she still ain't locked up. And she's out doing book tours and getting paid to go on talk shows and making $3,000 a plate at dinner. All these people, they're all buddies. They all hang out together. They all sit at the same country club. While you, who can't go to the country club, is at work. And they practice a communist, part of the Communist Manifesto is to put the middleman between the grindstone and taxation. And that's what they're doing to you. All day long, all night long. Depends on how many jobs you have to make it. So that's why I made that one, and I noticed it didn't have a lot of views, and I wish people would listen to it because it has a lot of information in it. It lets you know what people really think. Just look at Che Guevara. Here was a guy that fancied himself as a freedom fighter, that fancied himself as one of the common people. Really, he fancied himself. He was an arrogant, pompous person. He thought he was better than everybody else. He wanted to be a king and a ruler along with Castro. And to prove his point, I put his quote in there, talking about how it's the duty of the government, the communist government, to take care of the people dependent upon government, to even teach them how to think, to teach them how to do things, to teach them what morality was, and to teach them that you had to use violence to get the middleman out of power. So if you're out there and you're considering socialism and you're considering people that are socialists and communists telling you how bad this country is, think about that. Think about, you're never going to be on the plane of these politicians, because that's how they feel. It's what Che Guevara said. You're down here and he's up here. That's why Castro and them are still in power and the Cuban people are still down there. I interviewed a guy from Cuba and I asked him, how do these people stay in power? How does communism stay active in Cuba? He said what they do is they go out into the country and they get the poor and they pick them up, and Father Castro brings them into the city and gives them an apartment, maybe with air, but it definitely has water and food to eat. It's better than what they were living in. And see, look how the government takes care of you, and they fall for it. And this guy risked his life on a boat to come to America. The guy loves America more than I see these young college kids today. Which is leading me into the next point. These greater learning institutions, these universities, these places where we complain about sending our kids to because they cost too much, and then we complain because our kids come home communist and want to beat you up and call you names and all other kind of crazy stuff. Here's my answer to it. Don't send them anymore. And another thing, stop watching football. These universities depend upon you to have these football powers. I know it's great. I love football just as much as the next man, but sooner or later we have to stop these universities, because if not, they only have one point of view. That's communism. Remember the quotes I put in there from Lenin. Give me your youth for a generation, and I'll change the world. Give me just 8 years. 8 years. Most kids go to college about 8 years, and then when they get out of the college, they're straight up hardcore communists. A lot of them turn to the group Antifa because Antifa is a paid for army for the communists. They're well funded, well trained, and they're violent. I've asked my senator and my congressman to list them on the terrorist group. I've asked them 5 times. They will do nothing for you. So do not believe your senators and your congressmen when they tell you they're going to do something for you. They're not ever going to do anything for you. They're just staying in power. Oh, the next 2 years when it comes up, they'll tell you they'll do all kind of stuff. They'll be out there at the local bars having a drink with you, telling you how great you are. And then once they get up there, they'll make a few appearances on the TV shows or whatever. And that leads me into the next thing. These communists and these plutocrats have a well-oiled military-style propaganda machine. It's called the press. Whether it's for the right or the left, it's all about pitting the common people against each other. And it's working. So my thing is, stop watching these news channels on both sides. They're propagandists. They're paid millions and millions of dollars each. None of them actually will talk to you face to face. Now, I'm not saying all. I'm saying there's probably some that are good. I'm going to say, though, most, if had a choice, wouldn't be around you. And I'm saying that they're just propaganda machines representing the plutocrats, the people that are above you and always remind you how they're above you and tell you you have to pay your taxes, you have to pay for postal service, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, oh, and by the way, we voted to go to war in a country that has nothing to do with us. Don't you agree with that? No. Oh, it doesn't matter because we voted for that. Well, no, you're supposed to represent me, my feelings, the people. Most of the people where I live at don't want to be in a war, and it's a military town. They want their people back. So that just shows you with the plutocratic government we have, that's what it is. And I wanted to talk about the socialists and the problems that they're causing. The next thing I wanted to talk about, this leads into talking about a civil war. I do believe if we cannot get to disunion, which I highly believe that would be the best answer for everybody, would be the disunion. I do believe we'll fall into a civil war. And I believe once we go down that path, it'll be like on a mine shaft with a cart going straight down and never coming up from the abyss. Because once America breaks into a civil war, foreign powers will invade. China and Russia and who knows, Cuba, maybe South America. They'll invade. They'll try to come in and cause problem amongst everybody. They'll try to take as much as they can because we won't be able to stop them. And I know people, well, we still have the military. Yeah, we'll have the military, and I will guarantee you what will happen if a civil war breaks out. And keep in mind, it's not going to be like the North and the South, uniformed people fighting battle lines. It's going to be factional fighting. Fighting in this big city, fighting in that small town, fighting over here, fighting in, like, say, towns in Texas, border towns in Texas, fighting in, like, places like, Atlanta and stuff like that. It'll be factional fighting, and the government will come out to squash that with a martial law, but it's not going to work because the factional fighting will continue. And so the military will actually try to go out and squash it militarily. That's not going to happen because military men aren't going to fire upon their own people. And I've heard if they would bring in the UN, that's not going to happen. Nobody's going to get involved like that. Now, Russia and China would get involved. I can guarantee you that. Whether they're here, they won't be in here with their military, but they'll send people to subvert things, to subvert other governments and try to control them, local governments. And a lot of people would die. A lot of people would die. Your power would be off and on. You may or may not have water. I live in the area where we get hurricanes, and let me tell you something. 5 days without power and water seems like an eternity. A week, which I've experienced, seems like forever. And you do not get cell phone service either because that cell phone towers go down. Food is hard to find. People are trying to break into your house. You don't have water. You don't have hot food anymore. You're eating cookies and you're eating whatever you can make on the grill. Keep in mind your refrigerator only lasts so long, so you have to cook up all your food at one time because if not, the meat goes bad. You don't have gas. You got $20 maybe. So when a civil war happens in these big cities, the power grids are going to go off. The water is going to be gone. Medicine, you won't be able to go get your medicine. So the first few people that will die will be people dependent upon medicine and people dependent upon kidney dialysis and stuff like that. You know, and you may have a generator at home, but that's only going to last so long, you know. So that's the first casualties of war will be those people. Then people will have either die from heat stroke or they'll die from being extremely cold and hunger. On top of people breaking in people's houses trying to steal their food and water. I know it sounds bleak. Oh, it does. But that's the way real life is. That's the way real life is when a hurricane hits. So I'm not describing a civil war. I was just describing a hurricane. So can you imagine what will happen if a hurricane or if a civil war happens? The last hurricane that hit, people were flown into my town because the hospitals were destroyed. So in a war, hospitals get destroyed. Where do those people go? Those people die. A lot of them died on the transport over. You don't hear about it because they don't ever put it on the news. But the real truth is that's what happened. So civil war is probably the option that the communists want us to get into because they feel that they're well funded from powers overseas, mainly Russia, Mexico, probably people from Britain, definitely people out of the EU. Those rich people definitely want to see the collapse of America because they want to control everything. Remember, they want an oligarchy, a worldwide oligarchy is what they're heading to. So, your first casualty of war will be the older people because they have heat strokes or cold, because where I live, it can get really hot during hurricane season. And like I said, 4 days seems like an eternity, a week seems like forever. People with medical assistance, people that have to have dialysis and things like that, people that have to have medicine. Once their medicine runs out, they can't find it. They're hungry. People break into your house and kill you because they're hot, they're angry, they're hungry, they're agitated. So fights will break out. People get shot. People get stabbed. You know, like I said, these were things that happened just from hurricanes, are definitely going to happen in a civil war. And then you'll have factional fighting. You'll have martial law. Your police stations, they'll try to control stuff, but they don't. They're just outmanned. So that's not even going to happen. They'll call in a National Guard, but at that point, people in the National Guard just aren't going to go because they're going to choose a side. And then people like Russia and China, when they see that happen, they're going to say, hey, look, it's a perfect opportunity. It's the communist thing. Don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. That wasn't a liberal saying. That wasn't a democratic saying. That's a communistic saying. So when you hear people use that, they're communist, or they have studied communism. And then they're going to flow right on in and take as much land as possible. So, that's the talk about Civil War. That's a real life scenario for Civil War based upon what I've experienced through hurricanes. I can't imagine what a Civil War is going to be like, because keep in mind there will be gunfire then. There will be people fighting each other with guns. So it makes it a little bit worse. All I can tell you is the big cities will not be a place that anybody will want to be. They will be, one, highly dangerous. Gangs will run them. Gangs basically run the downtown cities anyway. They've actually become, they talk about food deserts. They definitely will become food deserts and even shortages of water because the water systems will be cut off. There won't be any food. The grocery, you can't, if you haven't stored any food in your apartment or whatever in a big city, you're screwed. So, that's my talk about the Civil War. Maybe I'll do some more about it. The last thing I really want to talk about is I want to talk about how great and how wonderful the common people of America really are. So that was the real reason why I made the Disunion and Disunion 2. And I'll make more about the traditionalist side. But I wanted to preserve the life of both sides, of the enlightened side and the traditionalist side, because there's loving people on those sides. And the common people on those sides are wonderful people. So if we can't get the divorce or the disunion, my other option was, let's just form a common people's party. Let's put the plutocrats out of power, and that's all of them. Democrat, Republican, and Independents. Let's put them out of power. And then we can return this country back to a true republic. And let's put out of power the propaganda machines. That needs to be done anyway. The propaganda machines of the news and the TV channels have to be put out, so we can come up with a common person's television station and news channel that's honest, that reports nothing but the facts and doesn't put personal opinion into the shows. It's an actual news channel. We start our own website. I don't know why we don't do a common people's website, unlike Facebook and the rest of them, where they control everything you say, you think, they control what you can do. No. Common people are supposed to run this country. Remember, it's for the people, by the people. And it's supposed to be supreme power of the people over the government. We don't have any of that anymore. So that would be the second option after the disunion. Or it could be the option before the disunion. Form a common people's party. Because we're the greatest voting bloc in this country. We're the most giving, we're the most honest, we're the hardest working, the most loving, and we definitely can take the most pain. We can take a whole hell of a lot of pressure on us because this country and every country in this frickin' world is riding on our backs. We are carrying the world with our tax money. It's time to take our tax money and put it in our pockets to help us. Stop giving our money away to foreign countries. So if we form a common people's party, we will have to come up with other things, like we'd have to get rid of the platform that only allows Republican and Democrat. That only allow independent anymore. You'd have to allow everybody on the presidential debate. You would have to allow everybody in the Senate debate, the sheriff debate, the local government debate. Because common people, if they form their own party, they will win. If everybody quit voting for the Republicans and Democrats and independents and voted on the common people's party, the common people's party would win and we would control the country. And then we would put the country back to a republic and run it honestly. Stop giving money to countries that don't need it. Stop helping everybody else out when we need to help ourselves first. So, those are a few ideas. So, if the first two don't happen, the disunion and the forming of a common people's party, or vice versa, the Civil War will happen, and it was going to be hell on earth if it does. Well, thank you for listening. This was just kind of like a talking freely. I'll have the next paper put up called "What Are You Going to Do About It?" It touches a lot of what I talked about here, but it has, of course, quotes from some of the smartest people in the world, or some of the smartest people that have ever lived. And I hope you enjoy my videos. I will never ask for a donation. I will never ask for anything like that. I just want people to realize, common people to realize, that they are the most wonderful people in the world. And if we did form our party, the Common People's Party, I don't know what we would call it, but it represents the common people, we would control this country and take it out of the hands of the plutocrats and the socialists and the bureaucrats. And we would be in total control. And trust me, once that happened, this country would return back to greatness that we can be. I know that may not make sense, but we have an opportunity to return it back to the common people, to get rid of socialism, to get rid of the powers that are dividing us. So therefore, it's just a peaceful country that does for its people, and not for everybody else around the world, and make the plutocrats in power rich as we do it. I have one true love, and that's my country, and that's my love for the common people. And I hope that the common people can form its own nation, and that's why I called it the Common Man's Nation. So, thank you for listening.